What is going on, everybody? This is Brandon.
Stefan.
Happy Wednesday. Happy Whiplash Wednesday with the PCP Army Bad Batch Station, everybody. You already know. This is the place to be. 1 o'clock. We took a little bit of a break due to COVID. Sucked, by the way. But we're over it. We're back with great content. Today, we are going to be talking about how Marvel's biggest flex is always their bullpen, dating back all the way to the Bronze Age up until today. Marvel has had a plethora of extreme talent in both their writers and artists. We're here to talk about that with you today. Stefan, how are you feeling tonight, brother?
I'm good. I'm glad you're feeling better. I was gonna say I know COVID sucks. I haven't caught it yet myself, but I know that's not easy to deal with. So I'm glad you're back, man. I missed our segment last week, so
you know what? I missed it too. I miss being a part of Whiplash Wednesday. That is always the highlight. Everybody's always having fun. When you got to miss out on that fun, it's like, man, you're just in the back corner. You see, you're happy, you're smiling for everybody. You're like, damn.
In on that, yeah.
Actually, I was like slouched on my couch, right? Like half asleep, like coughing and like all sick and deathly, looked like the freaking plague and a half, but but we back here. And today's an awesome Whiplash Wednesday. We start at 10 a.m. Eastern time with Nick, giving us a tour of Cadets and Comics, Cadets Toys and Comics.
Yes.
Giving us a tour. They got a bunch of new product. Check out all their variants, all their toys. It's fantastic. Then you got to make your way over to this show, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Christ on Infinite Rants. This show is usually about an hour. We are the lead-in to chatting with the comic book community over on TM's channel. We're going to be talking with JD, Raging Cajun Comics, our brother JD, all the way across the coast. That's going to be fantastic. I'm excited for that. JD is an awesome community member. And you were on his show a few weeks ago, right?
Ooh, it was like a couple months ago, but it feels like it's been a few weeks ago. But he actually sent me a Christmas gift. I haven't opened it yet. It just came today. I haven't gotten around to opening it yet. But
want to open it?
Yeah, I have to go grab it.
Go grab it. I'll run down the schedule. I'll finish running down the schedule because after Crisis on Infinite Rants, we have a quick little break. Then we have Let's Talk About It remastered on Big Herm's channel, closing out the night. We got Fable from the Blame Fable show, one collection down. We got Stefan Missing Link, and they're going to be reviewing the comics that they have recently read. So 3 comics and all that jazz. It's going to be great. But we also have Manny from Tomorrow Cinema, or now it's Manny's Different Perspectives, because Manny is like Loki, right? He has a lot of variants. So this is a variant, right? We got Manny's Many Different Perspectives, and we have That Time Batman Committed the Unpardonable Sin, and we're going to be talking about Rebirth, Batman Rebirth, some early issues in that. And that's a book that I have not read in forever, so I'm excited to see Manny's Many Different Perspectives on that. Yes. So look for that video. I don't know when it's dropping, but I'm sure Manny will let us know on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. Be on the lookout through Instagram for everything the PCP Army Bad Batch has to offer. Before we get into today's segment, Stefan, let's unbox this thing, man.
JD, I'll just give a quick flash. Don't want to show off the address.
I'm really curious to see what he sent you.
Yeah, I'm going to read the note.
Oh, there's a note too? I love when people put notes.
Steph, hey brother, a little gift from one of your friends from California. I remember you like it when I showed it to you a few weeks ago, and I found another, and it was calling your name. Enjoy, my friend. And did a little. That's so dope.
Yo, look at that, man.
I'm gonna hang this up.
That's awesome.
JD's the best, man. One of the pillars of greatness in our community.
Yes. JD is always like looking out for everybody. He's always there, right? Even if he's not in the live chat, he's always on the replay.
Oh, absolutely.
JD is honestly one of the most genuine people I heard he's a pretty tall person too. I heard he's like 6'2".
Really?
I heard this man's like tall. Like John's comics with kids tall. But
fellas. All right. Let you guess first.
Yo!
No way.
Pyong, 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 pyong.
Yo. JD, thank you so much, brother. Dang, man. That's Yo,
that's a fire cover.
yes, Jim Lee greatness, baby. Oh man. Yeah. Thank you, JD. You're the best, man. Like, this is part of my grills now.
Oh, we're replacing it. Oh shit, we got the background going and everything. Make sure everyone takes the time to subscribe to JD, check out his content. His link will be in the description to this video.
Raging Cajun.
Yes, sir. So make sure you guys go check him out. If you're in California, definitely I highly recommend checking him out because he'll be local in that area, depending on where you are. Stefan, I'm really happy for you. That's awesome.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, JD, you're the best. I'm gonna pay it forward, and I got feedback. Cheers. You know what?
Got to get the coffee cup.
I don't have your
Yo!
I gotta wash the mug you gave me, but I've been using it very, very frequently.
I figured. I was like, you know what? I'm like, I know this man's gonna love a Miles mug. I'm like, that's what this guy's missing in his little like. You got to do it right, you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Brandon.
You got to drink coffee the right way. Except I made that mistake when I got my mom a Gryffindor mug, and it turns out we were all Hufflepuffs. So.
The thought that counts.
Yeah, I know. I was like, come on, like you praised Gryffindor for like 7 books, and now you're a Hufflepuff and you like Cedric Diggory. I'm sorry, he's dead. He was my favorite character.
Whoa, which one? Who?
I love Cedric.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Cedric was a man. Yeah. But that was my quarantine treatment. I read new X-Men and I watched Harry Potter.
Nice. That's a good remedy.
That was a really good remedy, man. But enough talking about our week, or my last week. Let's talk about this conversation. So starting in the Bronze Age, Jim Shooter comes in as editor-in-chief. Marvel was going bankrupt at the time. Let's kind of paint the story. Both comic companies are going bankrupt. Like DC was all ready at this time to cut their titles to just 3. Batman, Superman, and Justice League, right? It was like at that time where DC was bankrupt and Marvel, they were kind of floating around, right? Jim Shooter comes in 1976, and he doesn't relaunch the universe, but he brings in a lot of young talent. And when we talk about young talent, we're talking about a lot of comic book legends. We're talking about Steve Englehart. We're talking about Jim Starlin. We're talking about Chris Claremont. We're talking about an amazing cartoonist in John Byrne, who really adapted and grew. And those two put out the best-selling book. Frank Miller turned Daredevil into one of the bestsellers. Daredevil at the time was a bi-monthly book, right?
Was it?
It was a bi-monthly book, and it was getting ready to be canceled, right? Frank Miller comes in, and what does he do? He brings in, at this time, right, in the Bronze Age, Kung Fu was really big, right? Martial arts was a really big thing, right? We saw that with Master of Kung Fu was a great story, again, by Englehart and Starlin. But Miller ended up switching Fisk over as a Spider-Man villain more to the Daredevil side. We got some more Bullseye in there. We got more growth. Who Bullseye is just a new character in this point. He appeared less than 30 issues by the time that Miller took over. Bullseye appeared in 131. Miller took over 158 as the artist. Didn't get his first story until 164. But this is me lashing out about my favorite book of all time. But that book becomes not a bi-monthly book, but it becomes monthly now. He turned it into a monthly title. Like, you're picking this up with your X-Men. You are picking up Amazing Spider-Man that has Jerry Conway on it.
Did it become monthly because he increased readership, or is it just because he had story ideas?
Increased readership. It was the selling of the Marvel books. Now, keep in mind, like, if you guys have time to check out the Creators Corner we did with Jim Shooter, he thoroughly explained why he didn't like Frank Miller at first, But Frank Miller kept at it, and he gave him Daredevil, right? Yeah. Daredevil became Marvel's number 2 book.
Wow.
Became Marvel's number 2 book. The only thing that was selling above it was Uncanny X-Men, which that was the time we had John Byrne and Chris Claremont running. We had Doug Mensch who was doing Moon Knight in the early 80s. We had Walter Simonson come in later. We had Louis Simonson come in. But was really cool, what started all of this was when Shooter brought in a whole lot of talent. His first goal was to bring in Louis Simonson, who is already a really respected person in comics, in fandom, right? In this universe. Louis Simonson, right, basically had a lot of friends, right? She knew everyone. She either tutored everyone, taught them how to write. She was a big leader in the comic world. So having her there as one of the editors was great. Having Marv Wolfman part of Marvel for a short period of time was great. You later had Art Adams coming in later in the 80s. But what was also really impressive was Louis Simonson was the mentor to another great editor, right? And another great writer, and Nocenti, which is kind of building on Marvel's Bullpen. And Nocenti is responsible for a lot of spectacular Spider-Man in the 80s, going with Peter David. She was also responsible for introducing Typhoid Mary with John Romita Jr.
There's this really, it was like this one-shot story. I'll have to tell you about it after the stream, but it was like a Batman story written by Anne.
Yeah.
Nocenti, and it was a Batman Poison Ivy story, but the artist was John Van Fleet. I think he's the one who did the prose issue on Morrison's Batman, where it was kind of like reading a novel, and it was
that one. Yeah. I'm familiar with that.
It was good. I'll show you to you after the stream. But yeah, and Nocenti, am I butchering her name?
Right. And Nocenti.
Nocenti, yes, love her.
Right. You had so much talent at Marvel to where comics were buzzing. And because comics were the new talk of the town, because of what is called the Bronze Age, starting at Jim Shooter's tenure, right? Artists got a whole lot of comps, writers got their comps, right? And Marvel was booming on all cylinders. Jack Kirby coming back to do Eternals was huge for Marvel. And Marvel was really just booming on all cylinders. You had Jim Starlin and Steve Englehart going into their cosmic thing, which really took over the 80s and early 90s. And that really established how Marvel was able to build their bullpen. The Bronze Age started their bullpen. Every slot, every title was stacked, every title was selling. Readers were going to their spinner racks. I was not old enough for these spinner racks, but I know about them. Thank you to Mr. Shooter for the interview again. But and a lot of other people from the Bronze Age that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, Marv Wolfman and Steve Englehart, great people to talk to. But you also had George Perez on Fantastic Four. You had John Byrne on Fantastic Four. You had George Perez coming over to do the Squadron Supreme crossover with Steve Englehart.
Oh, wow.
And a big seller was in 1980. No, was it 83 or was it 82? Where Star Wars came back under Roy Thomas.
I want to say it was 82.
I think it was 82. But you had Roy Thomas drawing Star Wars. Not drawing Star Wars. He was writing Star Wars, right? So a movie that sold really well. A movie that we all hear stories about people who went to the theaters to see A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, right? Now has a comic book series. And that is now selling from a very veteran writer, later to be taken over. I think Michelini did a few issues, right? Michelini was another great person in the bullpen. Michelini was the one who did a lot of the Boba Fett stories later in the run. So, and then who was the artist? I think it was like Paul Ryan or someone. Tom Palmer, I think, did a lot. He was a great artist, but you had the Buscemas who were firing on all cylinders as well. You had Peter David coming through the ranks.
Love Peter David.
Peter David's Hulk, which is something I have to get into. I've heard nothing but great things, but his X Factor is amazing.
Yeah, I love his X Factor. Both incarnations.
Right. His early 2000s I've not read, but I read them run in the 90s. You had Bob Layton doing Iron Man. You had David Michelini doing Iron Man with John Romita Jr., who's also a big heavy hitter.
Yeah.
As we go into the 80s, we see the rise of a lot of careers. We get Todd Mcfarland, as we mentioned earlier, who is arguably one of the better artists of all time.
Yeah.
You have Jim Lee and Will Portacio, who started their career in Punisher War Journal.
Silvestri, yeah.
Right. You had Mark Silvestri coming up through the ranks. Now, a lot of these artists coming up that we know today, a lot of these writers didn't really get their start after the Bronze Age on these like these bigger titles that we know them today, right? A lot of them started with books like kind of like doing like Quasar issues or even Quasar, right? Mark Gruenwald wrote a great Quasar during the Infinity Saga, and that helped his career later to take over Captain America. So Marvel kind of has always had that next guy ready, putting them on these niche titles that tie in to bigger stories. And then that's how they kind of encapsulate, right? So we kind of talk a lot of it is events. So events do a lot for up and coming writers. I would even say today, because it gets them familiar with a lot of the characters. It gets them familiar with the tale at large and how stories are crafted like that and how they can kind of fit into this universe, right? Events are almost like you're taking the Marvel universe and you're making it a little bit smaller by making it tie-in. That's kind of the way that I think about it. And if I were a writer at Marvel, that's exactly how I would interpret it. So when Secret Wars was coming out and you had crossovers for that bred a lot of job positions. Also, the more you're selling, the more writers and artists you can take on at a time, the more opportunities you can have for these younger writers and artists. And that was all due to the Bronze Age carrying over into the 80s, which carried over into the 90s, which was heavily carried by, I would say, Tom DeFalco.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely doing a lot for Spider-Man. His Fantastic Four, as crazy as it was weird, and somehow I enjoyed it. But I know Robbie could probably tell you a lot more about that because he like kind of idolizes that one. But it's really cool to see how these events kind of have started a lot of these writers' terms. I'm going to jump ahead a few years, but you saw Donny Cates in, what was it? It was, what event was it? It was a Secret Wars tie-in.
Yeah, it's Secret Wars. I want to say, I forget the name of the mini event, but his first published work was 2015, the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars. It was like issue 2 or 3 of a certain miniseries. I can't remember the name.
Right.
But yeah, and then he actually, he's a good example of that. It's like, he started off with like not lower tier, but like Thanos wasn't necessarily a big property when he was put on the Thanos title. He kind of proved himself with Thanos.
Right. And then Death of Inhumans following, and Cosmic Ghost Rider. I would say Cosmic Ghost Rider was in many ways his first big hit from Thanos.
Yeah.
Cosmic Ghost Rider got even more of a following in that miniseries.
Oh yeah. I remember I was curious about that miniseries and I had it on my pull list, but for whatever reason my shop couldn't get it to me because the buzz was so big at the time, for Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Yeah, that was me too, because I remember that was like during my early collecting days where I was like first, and I saw Thanos on the shelf. And it was when they were just switching from Lemire to Cates, and everyone's like, lay off.
Who is this guy?
Lay off. Thanos is Thanos. He'll be around. So I was like, okay. And now all of a sudden they're like, did you want to check out the story again? Because we have the third printing, and this is like months later, and I'm like, oh, cool. So little did I know that one of the first comic books that I picked up due to like my shop's recommendation was the first appearance of Cosmic Ghost Rider in a third print.
Nice. Yo, you still have that?
Yeah, I still have it.
Nice.
So thank you to Beyond Comics. And that was kind of a wild ride, but I just had a thought. Jim Steranko's first work was Strange Adventures. I want to say it was 143 or 144. It was one of those 2 issues. And he was under the tutor of Ross Andrew and Steve Ditko. Right? So you want to talk about Marvel kind of having that kind of a bullpen? John Romita Jr.'s first work was in a Quasar issue that we kind of mentioned earlier. It was Quasar 17, I think, in like 1968.
John Romita Jr.
I think that was his first work in Marvel. I'm pretty sure that's like what I looked at. Because he did it. He did a few interiors in Daredevil 17 and 20, and then 22. And then he later started doing Amazing Spider-Man, and then he did like a bunch of other work, and then he kind of dabbled in X-Men for a while. And if I'm wrong, someone correct me in the chats because it's hard to like know the exact number. But if someone really, I'm almost like 90% certain that it was a Quasar issue.
Right. I mean that sounds about right. Usually, artists or writers get their start on these, like I said, lower tier properties. Like who's Quasar?
Right.
No one knows who Quasar is.
Right. Chris Claremont was Daredevil 102.
No way. That was his first Marvel work?
His first Marvel work was Daredevil 102.
Wow.
I have like 5 copies just because.
You have how many?
I have 4 or 5. 4 or 5.
No.
I'll put it in your gift box. But yeah, so it's kind of crazy to think about even like how far it dates, sometimes even before the Bronze Age. But I kind of want to talk about the 90s. Who were some other people that you remember that were up and coming during that time?
Ooh,
I know a lot of artists like Salvador LaRocca was getting his start. Steve Epting was.
I want to say Chris Bacalo maybe started in like mid to late 80s, but
Greg Capullo started in X-Force.
X-Force, yeah. It's like I've had my X-Force forever, and I was just going through it like a few months ago, and I was like, Greg Capullo, X-Men? Like, it blew my mind. I was like, yeah, Adam Hughes.
Adam Hughes.
Yeah, I don't know if he got I just saw his name in like one of it was like Uncanny. It was the first X-Men annual. It was like Cyclops is like, and then Wolverine, Psylocke. It's like
I try to ignore Cyclops heavy covers, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Cyclops.
But no, yeah, there's a lot of artists that got their start just doing like a page, 2 pages here, 2 pages there, and now all they do is covers. Adam Hughes covers all day. They're worth it though.
Mark Brooks Mark Brooks. I wish that man would go back to do interiors, bro.
No, man.
Greg Horn in the Captain America joints. That was during the Brubaker run. He did like some of those like pinups and like the anniversary ones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yo. Greg Horn, man. And now this man is purely an exclusive artist. J. Scott Campbell got his career started in a random Batman Shadow of the Bat joint.
Did he really?
It was like in like a Shadow of the Bat in like Detective Comics. It was like in like 98 or something. He was like, J. Scott Campbell did some interiors for Batman like back in the late 90s. And that was really cool. I mean, he drew mostly women in that. It was a more woman-focused tissue, but I mean, it's to each their own. I got you, J. Scott. I got you.
Have you ever seen our Red Gen 13?
I have not. I see it all the time, but I have not.
It's cool, yeah. But it makes sense. A lot of the characters in that book were female. Well, we know that's his area of expertise.
That's his area of expertise. I mean, cover swipe my own covers now. That's what he does. He cover swipes himself. You know how many times I've seen that X background and it's either like Black Widow or Emma Frost or someone else. I'm like, or Black Cat. Like, God damn it, man. Get it together.
Were they like looking over their shoulder?
Yeah. And I'm just like, and like they have to pose like their hands like against like the background. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man.
There's an audience for it, so I can't hate them. I can't hate the player. It's the game.
Yeah, it's the game. I mean, I'm just like, bro, but come on, you're J. Scott Campbell. Do better. But it's who else? Like, I have this X-Men Revolution omnibus, and I always love seeing the names in there because I'm like, this guy's been drawing in the 90s. Like, I thought like some of these guys were just like up and coming.
Yeah. This is random, but I really love Francesco Francavilla. Francavilla. I love his art, and I don't know what made me look it up the other day, but he's 70 years old or something like that. I was like, or he's 60. It could have been 60.
Yeah, he's an old fart.
Not old fart, but I was just like, man, he's been doing this for a minute,
Yeah, and he's always like kind of been like, he's like I kind of compare Francisco Francavilla. If anyone's into hip hop, you'll understand this reference. He's like 2 Chainz. He is the best featured artist of all time. If you need a fill-in artist, Francisco Francavilla is your go-to. I'm sorry. He is the 2 Chainz of comic books. And Paul Politier is right there with him. You want to talk about another great artist that everyone sleeps on is Paul Politier.
Yo, yeah, did he do the Guardians run with Abnett and Lanning?
I think he did a few issues. I haven't read it yet, but I think I remember his name in the Omnibus list.
He did the Fantastic Four stuff with McDuffie, though.
Yes, that he did. He also did War of the Throne for Aquaman with Jeff Johns when Ivan Reyes was taking a break.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. I didn't read that. Yeah, I'm gonna check.
Yeah. I have the trade. I can send it your way and stuff. But that was like I got that like getting amped for the movie because like that's like it had like the movie cover on it. I'm like, yo, this is gonna be great. I loved it. There's a lot of good stuff there.
DC, get Jeff Johns back.
DC, please. That might be our next Crisis on Infinite Rants. Why should Jeff Johns return to DC? Even though he is with a Flashpoint sequel-ish. I mean, he's exploring like Thomas Wayne. Yeah, he's doing a 8-issue mini with Eduardo Risso, and it's Bruce Wayne. It's Thomas Wayne, Batman, in the Flashpoint.
I can't be mad at that.
I can't be mad at that.
I'll be picking that up. I won't.
I cannot be mad at that. Yeah. I don't like Flashpoint for editorial reasons, but as a story, it's fantastic. But editorial destroyed everything that I want to like about Barry in that comic book. So that's a different story for another time. But writers too, man. We talked about Tom DeFalco a little bit. J.M. DeMatteis was up and coming in this. We even saw him doing stuff with Justice League International over in DC, but with Marvel, he was really one of the engineers of Ben Reilly. And this was a misconception that I had about Ben Reilly, is that he was basically an eviler Peter Parker. But that's because the clone conspiracy turned everyone against him.
That was Dan Slott, right?
Yeah, that was Dan Slott and
Jim Shires, Mr. Slott. But no, yeah, I want to say that was almost when I was growing up. Like, of course, I had seen the Spider-Man cartoon that came out like '94 around there. I was maybe five going on 6, but within the comics, at the time, I think it was the clone stuff going on. And by the time I started, it was maybe like around 96, maybe late 95, I started picking up Spider-Man comics. Like I've said before, it was always X-Men. I'd grab other things here or there. I'd grab a couple X-Men comics, but at the time in the comics, Ben Reilly was Spider-Man. So that's was my first introduction to a Spider-Man. Like I knew Peter Parker was, Spider-Man, but in the comics, that's who was Spider-Man at the time when I was reading was Ben Reilly. So I've got a fondness for Ben Reilly. I love his costume. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man costumes. The gauntlets being on the outside, it kind of looks cool, but yeah,
come on, can we just went for the emblem?
Where like have 2 fingers will be like have the spider webbing on it, the rest will be blue. I think that's just so dope. But I was excited for the Clone Conspiracy initially until because I wasn't reading it at the time because I had taken I take small monthly breaks sometimes. Right. But when I came back, I found it was like Ben Reilly. I was like, no, you mean like a clone of Ben Reilly or something? It couldn't have been the real Ben Reilly. But that's my rant. Love Ben Reilly.
You know who else was a great engineer of the 90s, and he was really up and coming as well, is a man named Howard Mackey.
Yes.
The only reason why I think of this is because I like kind of looked to my left and I saw a Ghost Rider comic. I'm like, oh, Danny Ketch. That's mirrored out of Howard Mackey. Following
he created some Wolverine stuff.
Yeah, he did Wolverine. He did a Gambit run with Lee Weeks. Actually, Lee Weeks was up and coming in too. Lee Weeks was doing Daredevil issues like 297 to like 312, which is when Daredevil was not selling at all, and this is after Nocenti left. Nocenti, I'm a huge fan of Ann Nocenti's. If anyone else wants to tell me otherwise, unsubscribe. Ann Nocenti is a goddess. Ann Nocenti is one of the great minds of comic books.
And I agree with that. Now, I got a quick question about Daredevil. I was always of the mind that Daredevil's never really had a weak run, but I was just kind of thinking from like Kevin Smith forward. Like, but what about in the 90s? Like after Miller left in the in the 80s, who
Mark
was
Gruenwald took it up. J.M. DeMatteis did a few issues, which was kind of solid.
right?
DeMatteis is a very emotional writer, so he was really in touch with Daredevil, but he didn't have the best artist. I forget who it was, but the 90s were not a hot street for
He had
Daredevil.
that weird. Hold on.
He had a weird costume. It was almost like he was. They did this weird thing in the 90s where it was like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Very edgy.
It was a weird time for Daredevil. It was like we've told our best stories with him, so we're gonna write some really like dismissible things. And also, some comics were not selling that well in the 90s due to a lot of overshadowing. And Marvel rebounded very nicely from the Image Foundation, but a lot of their titles took a hit. Daredevil was one of them because now they didn't have the bench that they had previously that they had in the Bronze Age in the 80s. They didn't have that because now they had to use their bench, their bullpen as their starting lineup, right? Which some people really flourished, some people really didn't. Scott Lobdell, I'm sorry, but he really didn't.
Why? Scott Lobdell, you know what? I don't know why you have a gripe against him.
His Fantastic Four got him fired, and that's
why. What'd he do?
He wrote a really terrible story. So this was back
X-Men. His X-Men was not that bad, bro.
No, his X-Men wasn't terrible. His X-Men was not bad. His X-Men was decent. It was good. Yeah. But it was funny. The first ever interview we did on Comics Kings was with Scott Lobdell. This was back on IG Live.
No way.
This was April of 2019.
Wow.
20?
Was it?
Yeah, it was back when I was doing it with my old friend, and Scott Lobdell was our first guest. This is literally the week before the allegations came out. So I deleted the video and everything. Like, it was bad. He has a lot of sexual assault allegations. Sexual misconduct. A lot of female comic creators have come out against Scott Lobdell. That's why he was no longer writing Red Hood. That's why he's no longer employed. That's why he's no longer on social media. But I made a rule for myself. I was like, yeah, we're not talking Teen Titans New 52. We're not talking Fantastic Four. You know what he did? He talked Fantastic Four. And he's like, verbatim, this is what he said. I'm not going to forget this because this is my first interview kind of stump where I didn't know what to say. He said, you're Fantastic Four. Marvel did not accept me back. And I was like, I'm sorry to hear that. I was like, so what was your next project? He went over to DC, and he was like, he was doing some independent work, and he went over to like DC and stuff.
Yeah, it was like Wildstorm.
Yeah, but Scott Lobdell was an up and coming writer. Who else? Help me out here.
We had Joe Casey.
You had Joe Casey.
Joe Kelly.
You had even Mark Millar kind of got his start in the late 90s.
No, yeah. Ellis, Morrison, Millar,
all those guys got their start.
Well, Morrison kind of got their hit in the late 80s, but they were cemented in the 90s. Right, being as prolific as they are.
Right, but what really kind of we were kind of talking about Daredevil a little bit and kind of his story that wasn't selling. I will give Kevin Smith this. He didn't write my favorite Daredevil story, but he was a really hot name that brought that title back to its glory.
To prominence, yeah.
He
was definitely the catalyst that got the ball rolling to putting Daredevil in prominence again, Was it was him and Quesada on art, right?
It was him, Quesada, Palmiotti did the inks. Wow. And then David Mack took over on issue 12. Issue 9 was the introduction of Echo, and then
you don't really have many even people like Jim Palmiotti, bro. Like he's like a triple threat. Like he, did inks. He could write as well. He was just you had a bunch of creators that had their hands in many different aspects in this.
Joe Quesada too did it all.
Joe Quesada, I love Quesada. Like his reign as EIC to me, I mean, maybe that's because that's like when I was really getting into it, but you can look back on it and the work speaks for itself. Avengers was selling, Spider-Man was selling, Daredevil was selling, Captain America was a must read. Like they
right.
were
Talk about that a little bit. Like, talk about that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the early 2000s during Quesada's reign, yeah, I just know that I don't know what was going on, but I just feel like they had a very solid stable. Like you had Jonathan Hickman on tap, you had Matt Fraction on tap, you had Jason Aaron on tap, Brian Michael Bendis, Ed Brubaker, Kieran Gillian,
Rick Remender.
I'm sorry, Mr. Remender. I can't believe I forgot him. And these were all writers who, more or less, I don't know if they were exclusive exactly all the time, but they were only doing Marvel work for the most
part. Greg Hurwitz doing Moon Knight.
Greg Hurwitz, yes. Yeah, Vengeance of Moon Knight. I loved his Vengeance of Moon Knight.
Right, Jerome Pena doing the art.
Beautiful stuff.
Talking about Moon Knight because the trailer dropped. Read Vengeance of Moon Knight.
Yeah. But I don't know. And it's like back then it's like I don't feel like that. I feel like that's kind of like a problem with maybe both big two, DC and Marvel, but for sure with Marvel you had to earn your keep back then. Like, Jonathan Hickman didn't come out of the woodwork and throw him on Fantastic Four. Like he started off with smaller titles like Secret Warriors.
Right.
No one knew who they were. Matt Fraction took
Ultimate Hawkeye too,
Yeah, that was phenomenal. Matt Fraction came and took a kind of a cheesy era character of Danny Rand and made him prominent again.
Yeah.
Ed Brubaker had took Captain America and put like a cool espionage thriller, and he like injected that type of feel to his Captain America run.
Yep.
Bendis was trying new things across the board with Marvel. Like, it just seemed like they were attuned to what readers wanted.
You also had early Brian K. Vaughan.
Brian K. Vaughan.
You had Brian K. Vaughan doing Ultimate X-Men down in the. You also had Brian Wood was doing it. Brian Wood was doing it. The writer of DMZ, the writer of Northlanders. Northlanders is a great comic book, guys. Like, if you love Conan.
I got the first two trades. I
can't find them. I had to pirate that book, man. I had to go online because it's so out of print.
No way.
It is so out of print. Northlanders is like one of my absolute favorite Vertigo books, man. Yeah, that was the first ever Vertigo book that I read, and I was literally
reading it trade one yesterday.
Let's go.
Yeah,
this show brings so much out of us.
Fight for Tomorrow. That was a good Brian Wood, but that's from Vertigo, but it was like early 2000s.
But he got his work in the Ultimate Universe. Brian K. Vaughan, Runaways, which I haven't read, but it's critically acclaimed. Doctor Strange, The Oath.
The Oath, that's one of my favorite Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, man, that was awesome. That was a great little Wong story. Like I never cried over Wong like before, but that movie, that book really
or even in the early 2000s, you had Morrison writing the X-Men stuff. You had Joss Whedon attached to. These are writers who weren't necessarily at the time doing anything for DC. All their stuff was either indie or Marvel, like that. Marvel really capitalized on that.
Now, you want to talk about which company is better, Marvel or DC? Marvel always has that like kind of like question mark. Okay, who's gonna be their next guy? Who's gonna write the next big series? Right? DC, in my opinion, has always had an anchor that has driven their universe since Crisis. New Teen Titans brought the universe back. Marv Wolfman and George Perez single-handedly rebranded the DC universe with Crisis. Right? Which that is the first time any DC fan was able to see every single DC character in that book. That was the goal of that book, was to draw every single DC character. Why has DC never sold? It's because they've stacked up their Trinity, right? They've stacked up Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern had some sellers. Gil Kane did to get his work. Gardner Fox wrote some pretty decent Green Lantern. Danny O'Neill did.
But what's curious about DC's Trinity is that Wonder Woman's necessarily never really been a big seller, but they keep, I'm not saying that she's a bad character.
She never sells.
Yeah.
They never made her important until Perez took over the book.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which returns me to my original point. DC relies on one or two people to rebrand their universe.
Yeah.
What did they do?
And
Sorry.
oh, sorry. No, I was gonna say not even in terms of characters, in terms of writers as well. Like Jeff Johns was
Jeff Johns.
the figurehead for DC for years. I want to say from
going on a decade.
Yeah.
Over. Damn near over a decade.
2004, he did Green Lantern Rebirth.
Green
and
Lantern,
that led straight into Green
He
Lantern in 05.
Yeah, he was on to Green Lantern for like
it
ended in 09. I think that was the last issue.
Well, no, then he carried on with the Sinestro stuff in New 52.
Yeah. So
2012 or 2013, I think he did his last
Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Because he started New 52. He took like a hot break from that title for a minute. But Jeff Johns really anchored that universe, right? Yeah. Jeff Johns was the kind of writer who would take a ground concept such as Hawkman. Ain't nobody in the right mind would ever think that Hawkman would be a critically acclaimed series. I love Hawkman to death. That is my boy right there. But he's never going to be a character where, like, you know what? Hawkman is a very interesting title. Not Hickman. Jeff Johns is the one who brought that book to fame.
Yeah. He understands how to get to the core of characters. That's why I wasn't, when he was, I'm going off topic, but when he was initially pulled off of comics and they put him into like the movie arena, I was like, okay, he can be like their Kevin Feige. He can be Warner Brothers Kevin Feige. That didn't exactly pan out, but he's definitely someone who understands the core of most DC characters, what makes them tick,
Right. Yeah. And that's his JSA is like that. I've been reading a little bit of it lately, and it's a great introduction to all the characters and to that universe, because the problem of reading comics during the New 52 and Rebirth, and even now, is you haven't seen the JSA in the better part of 10 years. And like, I haven't really seen them. Like, I've seen them in Venditti's Hawkman, which is astounding, but he would have never been able to get that title in the first place without Jeff Johns making that book a seller. Let's be honest, people. Yeah. But Venditti's Hawkman runs Jeff Johns out the door, in my opinion. But you would have never had that book without Jeff Johns. You're seeing a little bit of JSA now, but it's more like you're seeing it. They call themselves Justice League Incarnate, when I would much rather Justice League Incarnate just say JSA, and you just make that your multiverse, because that's what they're used to doing in the first place. But anyway, that's a story for another time. But what's really interesting in the comparison between Marvel and DC, you're always able to predict who the next writer for the Green Lantern title. It's because they play musical chairs with their titles. Right? Because they don't have that benchmark. Why is DC hurting today? It's because they don't have that bullpen. They don't have the luxury to have as many titles in their arsenal. That's why characters get forgotten about.
I think Marvel's hurting a little bit in that aspect as well. Also,
I think today they're stronger than they were 2 years ago.
They are stronger, but I don't. No shots at Cebulski, but I don't know if he's necessarily the man for the job as EIC. There just seems to be no cohesive vision like there was when there was with Quesada or Alonso. Axel Alonso had a cohesive vision.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think there's really any thought being put into a lot of creative teams with Cebulski.
Yeah, I think the announcement of Zeb Wells being the ongoing Spider-Man, which I like Zeb Wells. He's written Spider-Man before. This guy's no stranger to Spider-Man. He was part of a part of what, Brand New Day and all that stuff. He was a part of that Spider-Man brain trust. He's used to operating with a lot of Spider-Man characters. He's a very quippy writer. He's riding a wave off Hellions, but do I think he is fit to relaunch Amazing Spider-Man? No.
I don't agree with that. I
would have preferred Kelly Thompson.
I think Kelly Thompson is another writer Marvel needs to be given bigger projects. That's the thing. It doesn't seem where they to know where they want to put their creators on certain projects right now. I feel like they're figuring it out. Like, maybe it was because a few years ago when before Marvel got the rights back, or Disney got the rights from 20th Century Fox to the X-Men stuff, or like film and stuff, they were trying to like kill the X-Men in comics a little bit, you know?
Yeah, because they're like, you can be our third best title, but you can't beat Matt Fraction's Iron Man. You can't beat it. You can't beat anything that JMS is doing with Thor right now because we need that movie to sell. They didn't care for Fox movies.
They were they made plans based off of that, and then when they got the rights back, you know, they make these plans out months to years ahead of time of like what storylines lead into what. And maybe when they got the rights back and like, yo, we can start using X-Men mutants again, they had to like reformulate the plans, you know, and maybe they're just now starting to get to the momentum again. Because I think I'm actually really excited for Zeb Wells.
I'm excited too.
Spider-Man's supposed to be funny. I don't know. He's never taken a book of this scale. I'll give you that. But there's a first time for everything, and he did the thing where I said they used to always do it. Like Morrison, Matt Fraction, Millar, they weren't just brought into Marvel and put on the biggest titles. They had to work their way up. They had to prove themselves with these, you know, lower tier characters. Zeb Wells has been doing this for years.
And Hellions was kind of his coming out party, I will say.
Yeah. I don't know how much Zeb Wells you have read, but I'm going to recommend you some Zeb Wells later. I think you'll get a better appreciation for what he might have to offer.
Yeah, and I've read his Spider-Man. I definitely do need to go back and read a lot more of his work. What I'm really now, if we were to say Marvel doesn't have the bullpen that they do today, like during like the whole Marvel Legacy when that was first getting relaunched in 2018, and Marvel was kind of 2017, 2018. When I first started getting into comics, right, that was like around that time and everything, right? 2017, and Marvel didn't have a very big lineup. Like you saw titles getting canceled left and right. Like you think like Captain Marvel was written by Stoll. What was her name? Yeah, like Margaret Stoll.
It was like after. Sorry, go on.
That book didn't surpass like 20 issues or something. Look at Captain Marvel now; it's about to hit issue 40.
No, Kelly Thompson's the only one to break that cycle. I was just gonna say it's been like 10 years. It's been like since 2012, Captain Marvel has almost had a relaunch almost every year. There's maybe been like 1 or 2 years where she didn't get relaunched, but almost every year there's a new Captain Marvel series coming out.
You know, and this was like kind of during that kind of span of Marvel trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
This is where I would say CB Cebulski failed. He didn't give books a shot. I think now he really is. Like you saw Savage Avengers get up to issue 28.
Yeah,
whoever thought?
No, that was pitched as a mini, right?
That was pitched as a mini series. That was Mike Deodato's retirement party. That was Jerry Dugan's coming out party.
And you know, from what I'm gonna go back and get that book or read it, but from what I've heard, it just sounds like they were just having fun that entire.
They were having fun. There's no editorial involved. You mean to tell me that someone really said Conan can't say this to Doctor Strange? Doctor Strange can't sleep with Elektra. Jerry Dugan said, screw all that, man. You know, Jim Zub is a great writer today. Conan is fantastic. Al Ewing is a fantastic writer who, like you said, was brought up over the years. This man was, and I will say this, Dan Slott, before he got ASM, She-Hulk was fantastic.
No, yeah, Dan Slott was, before he was working for Marvel at least
years. He was a Marvel fanboy. This man started as a fanboy.
Yeah.
He still is a fanboy. Check his Twitter, but...
But no, yeah, that's what I don't feel like that happens anymore. Like they need to, you know, writers kind of need to prove themselves to be.
Right.
I feel like that kind of happened with the Now they can say differently all day, but I don't believe Jonathan Hickman single-handedly picked every writer for his Dawn of X team. I'm not going to single anybody out, but I don't think he was involved with.
Sorry, Leah. Oh, my bad. But actually, I know for a fact Leah was hand selected. I actually know for a fact that X office was selected by Hickman.
You know for a fact.
I know for a fact because I was there. No, but because I was told by two people that both were in the room.
I was gonna say people can say what they want, but my feeling, based on what I've seen Jonathan Hickman exhibit as a writer, is that he was given a list and was like, pick from this list.
I can see that. Like, okay, he was like, okay, here's a list of people, hand select, and he was like, sure. But I don't think there was.
They made it sound like he was like, I want them. That's not how it went down. I don't believe.
I do think Vita Ayala was a Hickman choice, a Hickman move. I do think Hickman has had eyes on Vita Ayala. They are a fantastic writer. Their static is fantastic right now. Their New Mutants their New Mutants is honestly like becoming one of my favorite books out of the X-Men spinoffs. And there's a reason they're still writing New Mutants.
No, I was gonna say I think Vita saved New Mutants. I was not a big fan of
the whole swapping between Brisson and Hickman.
Yeah.
Brisson just didn't understand Beak. And I don't get it. And I'm like, you didn't understand anything that Beak is for.
Man, I'm gonna have to read something different, but the few X titles I've read from Brisson just did not hit for me.
Brisson Extermination was good, and that was
Larraz. That was Larraz on art. That's why that was good.
It was fine. It was a cool concept, you know. I liked it. It was fun. It was a good little adventure.
It was a fun little series, yeah. His X-Force though,
I don't know. With Dylan Burnett on art. Oh my gosh, I looked at that first issue, and it was really weird. That was the same artist. What else did he? Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
I was like,
I like Dylan Burnett on art, but I don't know. Maybe the inks were a little too muddy. That series really didn't hit for me.
Yeah.
I heard his Old Man Logan was good though. Brisson's.
Oh yeah, his Old Man Logan was great.
I have to check.
What else did this man do that was great? Ed Brisson did Contagion. That was great.
I was curious about that, but I never checked that out.
Oh, dude, it was okay. You really want to see Ben Grimm fighting like toxin, like it's like a toxin chemical takeover. And it's like you get like a bunch of street heroes have to answer it. Like you want like a mini street hero event. It's Contagion. It's great. We should do that for archives one of these days. I want to do Contagion. Contagion was a fun read, man.
But I, you know, I got off topic. I feel like what was, you know, I don't know. There used to be like excitement when you found out a certain writer or artist was coming to a title that I don't think is really prominent right now. I guess like I don't think like that's a thing.
I would say that's kind of in Marvel's biggest flex, that they're able to do that, is to pull people out, like, okay, and make those pairings. You know, like who would have thought Kim Giacchino and Jeff Lemire could put out a great Sentry book?
That was a fun book, but I feel like that's far and in between though.
Or like, Al Ewing and Kenneth Rocafort, you know, two up and coming people at the time.
That was, the Ultimates was fantastic. Even the second volume with Christian Ward was super.
And
dope.
Travel Foreman.
Travel Foreman, yes, yeah. Your Travel did most art, and Christian did the filling. Yes.
He did, yeah. Issues like 9 and 11.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the whole purpose of this video is Marvel's bullpen, right, is always on fire. Right now, their bullpen, Steve Orlando's part of that bullpen, who's a great writer. Philip Kennedy Johnson, who is a great writer. Robbie Thompson.
Do you ever read Midnighter, Orlando's?
Yeah. Yep. I have that issue signed. That was his Midnighter and Apollo was great. Who did the art?
I gotta track that down, but I remember I was digging. I only have the first 2 issues.
It was Fernando Blanco on art, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm right. David F. Walker was also coming up in Marvel at the time. He was doing Luke Cage.
And did he do that before he did the Power Man and Iron Fist miniseries? Or not?
He did Luke Cage
around the time. Okay. Gotcha.
And then that got canceled to turn into Power Man because he did that with Stanford Green.
Yeah.
And that was when Bitterroot started to come into formulation, and that's when we have Bitterroot today. It was really cool.
They met on Power Man Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
No way, yo! Dang, I got like the first 9 or 10 issues of that, and then
that was a fun book, man.
Yeah, I dug it. I took a break around that time. That's why I don't have the rest.
Yeah, that was like that was like another book that I was like pulling earlier in my reading days, kind of like hitting that nostalgia for me right now. But I think when it comes down to everything, Marvel's had a few choke years.
Yeah.
Right? Which that's gonna happen. But during the early 2000s, another thing that really helped their bullpen that I'm learning about now, this is something that I've been exploring recently with your help, Link, is the Ultimate Universe.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Very strong, yeah.
And that really brought out a lot of Marvel's bullpen and flexed that.
I think what someone would help was like that was the whole thesis of like, well, not the whole, but it was a big part of it. Was like not only are we reimagining the heroes in the modern context, we're gonna put some of the best writers in our some of the best talent, whether it be writers, artists, colorists. We're gonna put them on this book to retell these modern origins for these superheroes. DC kind of almost started something like that with their All-Star line when they had Morrison and Quietly do All-Star Superman. Jim Lee and Frank Miller sadly did the All-Star Batman and Robin.
And John Romita Jr. was also on that book.
On
All-Star Batman. Didn't he do a few issues?
He was on the second volume with Scott Snyder.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. But that was a reboot, but the initial All-Star concept was supposed to be like, you guys come and tell these whatever, modernize these stories if you want, tell them in your own right, just put a classic. We're going to take great famous creators and have them tell great stories with some of our best characters. I think they need stuff like that back. They don't really have that now.
I think that would be a great time for them to do that. And I think we are going to get some of the Ultimate Universe. That's like kind of been my long-term speculation, is we're going to see the Ultimate Universe, and that's going to be constructed by Al Ewing. You've seen the Maker appear in multiple Al Ewing comics. You've seen you've seen him in the back pages of Donnie's Venom. You've seen him in the back pages at the end of his Ultimates. He's still lingering. Like, the Maker is still out there, and he's like being referenced. I've been seeing him like more and more, just kind of hear him there. He ties into the Vox Supreme, which is the big bad in Captain Marvel right now. Not saying Captain Marvel is going to carry the universe, but Al Ewing, oh my God, my voice hurts. Al Ewing they're preparing for something. That's the reason why Eternals is really good right now. That's the reason why Kieran Gillen is doing his thing. That's why we're doing the Reckoning War now. And I think that you shit on you talk bad about this a lot, is Empire. I think Empire was really just a setting stone for what's coming next. I think all of this stuff,
good.
No, I didn't say it was good, but I still enjoyed it, but it's a setting stone for what they have planned, because you have the Watcher back now. He's angrier than he's ever been.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is pissed off, right? He's like, there's going to be a reckoning. And we're going to learn about that in the next Fantastic Four issue. And I think...
do you have me thinking about the Ultimate Universe? I'd like to see, like, Hickman maybe be, like, the shepherd of that. And then you take, like, because that's how the Ultimate Universe started off. It was, like, they had, like, 2, 3, 4 writers that handled their titles, and they'd have a mini event to intertwine all the titles once in a while. And it was all the better for that. Like, it was hard to dilute stuff because there wasn't so much going on. It was really focused and confined. And like I said, they had top tier talent. Like, it was Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Millar, and maybe like Warren Ellis and someone else.
Right. Ellis got to start doing Thunderbolts, right? Or like really got to start. You know who else got to start doing Thunderbolts?
No. Ellis was. He was bigger. He's already doing indie stuff. Like Planetary was already out, but
okay.
He had a run on Excalibur in the 90s. I want to say what made me kind of notice his name was his Iron Man arc in the early 2000s, the Extremis arc.
Oh yeah, with Eddie Grenoff.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I have that trade. That was gifted. That was
that story.
Yeah, that was gifted to me by my friend who got me into comics. That was like the first Iron Man story that I read.
Nice.
Extremis. So
good friend. That's a good friend.
Of course, his name is Stefan, not Stefan.
Stefan.
I told you
he's a variant.
He is a variant. He's a little darker than you, but but
is this Peter Parker? No. Is this your Peter Parker?
No. But you know who else got to start doing Thunderbolts? Kirk Busiek and Mark Bagley. Well, Mark Bagley was already big, but
no, I was gonna say I don't know. I know Busiek was doing smaller. Like, I know he did some What If stuff in the 90s.
But Thunderbolts was really good.
No, yeah, Thunderbolts was phenomenal. That I know that happened in
It was 97,
97. Yeah.
96, I think the first issue came out. I think it was 96 because they crossed over. No, I'm wrong. It's 97 because their first appearance was in that Hulk issue. That was Peter David and Mike Diodato in 397, I think it was. Yeah, 397. Right. I used to own the issue.
Oh, do you?
I bought that issue for like $20, and then I resold it for. I sold it to someone I no longer speak to for $1.20.
Oh no, he did the Marvels with Alex Ross.
Yep,
in that
that's
early
the one.
90s.
I have not read that, and I have not read Earth X yet, which I have to read. Yeah. But you know what else Grant Morrison was doing at the time that was really impressive was Marvel Boy.
Early 2000s, yeah. Yeah, with J.G.
Jones. That was the introduction of Marvel Boy. It's a cool little miniseries.
Yeah, I have that over there.
I'm looking at it. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, that was the thing.
He's a character I'd like to see them introduce. Novar into the live action MCU. I think he'd be really cool.
I think he would be a cool like part of the Champions. I think like they relaunched the Champions and like did a TV show called The Champions. I think Novar would be great. However, I don't know why, but I really want to see that team. I really want them to make like a cartoon, like a Teen Titans cartoon, but with the Champions. I think that would be so dope.
I could see that.
Tell me how that wouldn't be dope. You know how many kids adored Teen Titans growing up?
Well, I mean, I was a teenager when it came out, and I loved Teen Titans.
Yeah, like I know Bryce as a kid like loved that. I know that was a big part of his childhood. Teen Titans. Mine was like Star Wars and Mickey Mouse and Disney and more Star Wars and obviously the Steelers, but mostly Star Wars. But did I mention Star Wars? I don't think I mentioned Star Wars. So I was really introduced to Star Wars. You know, but imagine if they did like a Champions cartoon and their target audience is like early ages. Like that's a good way to get kids back into comic books.
Yeah.
Because then what do they want to do, right? They want to put a comic in front of their face. These are the characters you already know.
Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That was a really good cartoon. I wish they would have kept going with that. Way better than the Marvel's Avengers stuff they have going on right now.
Right. That's a whole nother conversation too.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I feel like we're just spitting out like ideas for next episodes.
Yeah. We'll go back to this video. Like, yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
That one and everything else. But honestly, like I really do think Marvel's biggest flex as an industry is they always have that next guy up, you know, and like
they do. They take their time.
Yes.
They curate. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we're even seeing that now, like the Stormbreakers or the Young Guns program that was coming up. And they're really good at navigating where to put a lot of these artists. Like Ryan Stegman, right? You go back, you look at his pencils in earlier ASM issues, or even in Daredevil in 2013 when he was doing it with like Mark Waid. Nowhere near as groundbreaking as it is today.
Right, yeah.
Right? Look at Valerio Scheide, he's been doing work for years now. Nobody knows who he is until today. Look at Stefan Segovia and
no, I'm trying to think of where I saw it. I think my first exposure was Galaxy with Bendis with Scheide.
Yeah, he did do that. He was after McNiven left.
Yep.
Who was a vet, but you know, now you see Valerio Scheide taking on Inferno, right? You see Stefano Caselli doing that as well. You see Stefan Segovia literally doing a lot of great work. Phil Noto was an up-and-coming artist at the time.
Yeah.
Back then, you know, you have a lot of these guys who, if you ever go back and you see like older trades, I always like looking at the credits. I'm like, where were these guys? Where did they start? You know? And you just look at the progress from both the writers and the artist standpoint. And I'm going to say this right now. Nick Spencer's not a terrible writer. His Ant-Man was great.
I keep hearing that. I've only got like 2 issues. I think I have like issue 1 of his Ant-Man and then like a random issue of his Astonishing Ant-Man.
Did you ever read Mark Waid's? That came right after with, I think it was Roman Rosanas on art, who's like doing Star Wars now. It's
backlog. I've collected it. I have not read it.
It's better than Mark Waid's Ant-Man. And Mark Waid did a pretty good Ant-Man.
Okay.
But is there anything else that you wanted to, that you think we should cover?
No, I feel like we've covered quite a bit. Yeah, I agree with you. Marvel's always had a solid bullpen. I feel like they faltered a little bit over the last couple of years, but I do feel like they're starting to get back on the ball
Right.
and gain their momentum. Gain some momentum back. So let's just get back to the golden days where every book you wanted to take a chance on it.
Right.
Like,
That's kind of been the whole motto. Going back to Jim Shooter is we're gonna give it a chance.
right.
We got to get I agree 100%. We do got to get back to those days. But no matter how many titles Marvel puts out, there will never be more Marvel titles than there are Batman titles because we have 25 of them. But no, I'm kidding. But why do we have that? Because we keep buying them. Stop it, guys. Carrot Chip Starsky's writing it. I'm picking it up anyway.
Starsky.
I know. Now I see the problem. Yeah,
right.
Oh, Jeff Lemire's doing Batman. Gotta have it. Oh, Tom Taylor did Batman. Gotta have it.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you guys for tuning in today to Crisis on Infinite Rants. This is your Wednesday entertainment show. After this, we got chatting with the comic book community, followed by the closing show. Let's talk about it remastered. We're going to be seeing you guys all day today. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to everybody in the PCP Army Bad Batch. All their links are in the description below. Follow them on Instagram, whether you see the books that they are whole backlogging. You can see our backlogs as we see. Here's the thing: when we say we lower our backlogs, we're really adding to it because we read something and we buy twice the amount. So
it's like taking 1 step forward, 5 steps back.
Oh yeah, that's like our back. I'll read one trade, but I have 2 Omnis on the way. That's progress, everybody. So follow everyone in the Bad Batch to see our backlog, and you can figure out what that is because we haven't figured it out. Let us know in the comment section who are some of your favorite Marvel writers that got their start early on. We really want to hear from you guys as well. Thank you guys so much for all your time today. We really cannot thank you enough for all the support. Coming down, we got Creators Corner. Coming down, we got Roy Thomas coming in February. That's really, really cool. I'm excited for that. That. And we have some people down the line that I'm getting ready to announce. Nothing is confirmed yet, but once we know more information about that, Creators Corner is going to be back full in fashion. And we're talking 2 guests a month, maybe more. We went ham the end of 2021. 2022 is going to be even better. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the journey. This has really just been a great experience overall. Absolutely. And station everybody, let's get this roll call going.